sister got the entire family to alienate me because I got pregnant without being married or in a committed relationship because it ruins their family legacy. Today, after 5 years of it all, I got a call from her sobbing because she's in the same position as I was and can't fathom that her own rule is being applied to her. Now she's on the verge of homelessness and wants me to help her out. I, 28, female, don't really have a very good relationship with my family. What I'm about to tell you is mostly about my sister Sylvia, 25, female, who is my younger sister. For a while, I was in completely no contact with my family. Initially, it was their own decision, and later, it was mine. I know all this may sound very complicated, so I will try to explain my background as much as possible. This post might get a little long, but I think I should tell you everything about my past so that you can make proper judgments. Context is necessary, so I will talk about it first before I tell you exactly what my problem is. I got pregnant when I was 23. I wasn't married but had a boyfriend. So, basically, it was a child out of wedlock. Now, to many of you, this may seem like not a very big deal since it can happen to anyone and does happen a lot. It was an accidental pregnancy, and neither me nor my ex-boyfriend was prepared for it. I was extremely overwhelmed when I found out, but quickly accepted my fate. There was no way I would have terminated my pregnancy. I was determined to raise my child. Problem was that I was extremely panicking and stressed out about one thing. My family seriously looks down on people who get pregnant out of wedlock. I mean it when I say that. They are very serious about it. I knew that all of my family would disown me and isolate me as soon as they found out. Maybe they would have been more accepting if my ex had planned to marry me and raise the child together, but he basically washed his hands of me after he knew about the pregnancy. He didn't want to be a dad and definitely didn't want to marry me. When I refused to terminate my child, he broke up with me and told me not to contact him again. I was scared and all alone and didn't even know who to rely on. I was super scared of telling my family because I knew how they would react. I had been working up the courage to tell them, but Sylvia beat me to it. She had been visiting my apartment to collect something and possibly snooped around. She found the pregnancy test and prenatal vitamins and then blasted me to everyone. In a matter of days, everyone in the family went no contact with me. My own parents called me some nasty things and told me that I had disgraced them and myself. I was told that I was a failure and ruined my life completely. Sylvia spread the news to the extended family and got me banned from everyone there as well. She was reveling in the fact that I was being practically disowned. She went around feeding people lies about how I was a loose woman and my character had become questionable. She even told some people that my ex bailed because I was sleeping with multiple people and didn't know who the baby's father was. All lies, of course. I tried to tell my family the truth, but just the fact that I was pregnant was enough for them to throw me out of their lives. They insulted me whenever I showed up to talk and even told me that they would never be in my child's life. It was a very hard time in my life, and I mentally struggled a lot. Eventually, though, my parents came around, but sadly, I ended up having a miscarriage. 5 years have passed since then. I now have a more or less decent relationship with my parents and a few of the extended family. I was content with how things were and didn't want to get too involved with the family again. Then 2 days ago, my sister Sylvia showed up at my doorstep crying. Well, she has found herself in my situation and is freaking out. She's pregnant, and the boyfriend won't be involved. She wanted me to take her in and help her because she had been disowned in the same way I had been. Now the thing is that it was way easier for me to deal with the situation because I was a working woman with an income. Yes, the father had bailed, but that didn't really matter because I still had the means to raise my child. It was just bad luck that I didn't get to keep my child. The stress of everything just made me sick and ultimately caused my miscarriage. And, no, I am not making this up. That's what the doctor suspected since I had no medical problems whatsoever and was fairly careful with my pregnancy. I may have been overwhelmed, but I had tried my best to keep my baby healthy. Sadly, it was just too much for me, and what happened wasn't even in my control anymore still. Even if I didn't have a support system, I had my money. I didn't have to rely on anyone, but in my sister's case, things are very different. She lives with my parents, didn't go to college and can't hold down a job for over 3 months. I'm not sure what her problem is with working and was never interested in finding out. I prefer not to hear about her and whatever information I have is through my mother who likes to vent about her when she's frustrated. So Sylvia doesn't have the means to support herself. My parents didn't care and neither did the rest of the family. She's being ostracized and isolated in the same way that I had been. I won't lie and say that it did bring back a lot of past traumas and bad feelings, but I have been dealing with them well. That was until she showed up on my doorstep crying and begging for help. You guys may think I'm a monster, but I refused to help her. I didn't like how she confidently showed up to my place and expected me to help her after everything she did to me. Sylvia didn't like the fact that I refused to help her. She cried and cried until she got angry and began screaming at me. She went off on me about how I was acting selfishly and not helping out my one and only sister when she needed me. She also called me some choice words because I was denying her help despite knowing exactly what a messy situation she was in. I got really angry at that point and reminded her how she had treated me when I was in the same situation. That went right past her head because she refused to acknowledge or address it. She just kept shouting about how I should help her out, and I owe her this because I'm the big sister. I was so fed up with her at this point that I shut the door in her face. Sylvia stayed for a while and kept pounding on my door, but left after some time. But that didn't stop her from spamming me with texts and calls. She even got her friends to chime in and tell me what a Satan's incarnation I was for denying to help my poor sister. They also talked about how I was condemning my poor nephew, niece to a bad life by making my sister homeless. I don't know why they're not offering their own place for her, but oh, well, what got me a little confused and even a little angry was that my parents reached out to me and asked if I was going to help my sister. I don't understand how it was okay for them to refuse to help, but I can't do the same. I haven't replied to them yet because I don't know what to say anymore. One thing that has been bothering me is that I know the child is innocent, and I just feel bad for the kid. Sylvia will never have my sympathy though. I feel like I'm stuck in a bad situation. No matter what I do, I'll be feeling something negative about it. Do you guys think what I'm doing is right? Any tips on how I can handle this situation? Edit. You guys had some interesting and sparky questions about why I was still holding a grudge against my sister, but let my parents off the hook. Well, I didn't let my parents off the hook for nothing. As I've already mentioned, my parents made amends with me and did everything possible to re-establish a relationship with me. They had reached out to me a month after my miscarriage and told me that they didn't want to alienate me after all. They didn't know about my miscarriage. They were ready to accept both me and my child. Both mom and dad had been extremely nice about it and apologized for reacting so badly. They had been pretty sad when I told them that I had miscarried. It has been a long uphill battle for them since then. For the next 6 months, I went no contact with them and rejected all their attempts to reconcile. They never gave up on trying to make amends. They apologize in every way possible. They even went to therapy to work on their behavior. When we slowly started talking again, my dear sister went yapping to the extended family about how my parents were trying to forgive me and bring me back into the family. A lot of my relatives had revolted against this idea and had pressured my parents to cut contact with me, but my parents cut them off instead and convinced the neutral ones to accept me back into the family. I didn't forgive my parents on a whim. It took them over 3 years of work to win back my trust. They know that I still blame them for my miscarriage, but so do they. I have no interest in taking sides here. I'm not acting out of petty jealousy. My sister has been a horrible person to me and never once apologized for her part in everything. Hell, she actually tried to get the extended family to force my parents not to make amends with me. Do you understand how crazy and disgusting she is? How do I forgive her after all this? How do I forgive someone who never asked for it? Update 1. I was having a hard time deciding if I was being mean to my sister, but most of you think I was being pretty justified in what I did. There have been some comments about how I should think about the innocent child and try to help out my sister for the child's sake. It's easier said than done, guys. I don't see a way in which I can help out the child without helping out the mother. And one thing I know for sure is that I don't want to help out Sylvia in any way. Call me bitter and vengeful, but I don't care. She can't even give me basic respect and apologize for messing up my life, so I don't see I should have anything to do with her. I would have been helpful and would have embraced her with open arms if she had done a fraction of what my parents did to make amends. Hell, my sister still hasn't apologized for it and kept dodging my questions on the topic. All she had to do was apologize, and she wasn't even willing to do that. Also, there has been a lot of anger from you guys towards my parents. Yeah, they messed up with me, but made amends. One thing I am also confused about is why my parents aren't helping my sister. I mean, they know now that their stance on babies out of wedlock is a little backdated and unhelpful. But all of this is not making sense. They have showed us Sylvia's responsibility all her life, so it's odd that they're kicking her out now. For the longest time, I thought Sylvia would get away with anything because she was the golden child. I hadn't expected my parents to do what they did to me. Maybe I should talk to them and see what's going on. All this nonsense is just messing up my brain and making me irritated. They want me to help Sylvia, but aren't willing to keep her with them. This is very weird and suspicious behavior. I don't know what the rest of the family is up to. Knowing them personally, I would say that they aren't thrilled with Sylvia and her choices in life. They never were, actually. Sylvia had faced a lot of criticism from the family for not taking life seriously and being way too dependent on our parents. I guess that's why she was so desperate to see me fall from grace so that people would criticize her less and divert their attention. Frankly speaking, it's not like Sylvia only let go of herself in recent years. She was always somewhat of a troubled child and constantly kept messing up. She never showed remorse for her actions either. My parents had tried to parent her, but it rarely worked. Sylvia never took her studies seriously and always wanted my parents to shell out a bunch of cash so that she could pay her way out of her studies. Not really sure what her logic was since I lost track of her antics a long time ago. I am kind of not surprised that Sylvia ended up getting pregnant out of wedlock and with no money to lean on. She always did have a habit of being irresponsible and the I will do it now and think about it later kind of girl. I know I sound like a hypocrite right now, but I was very careful with my life. The pregnancy was a big surprise and kind of came out of the blue. The guy I was seeing had some issues with parenthood, so he bailed when I sprung the news on him. Still, I had my life figured out and wouldn't have been dependent on anyone to raise my child. Sylvia's circumstances are much different than mine. Anyway, I think that's enough rant for today. I will try to talk to my parents and find out what on earth is going on with them. I'll shamelessly come back and ask for help again because I know that this fiasco is far from being over. Update 2. I met with my parents and talked about the situation. I think a lot of things have cleared up now. I haven't been able to answer a lot of questions you had because I simply didn't know all the details, but now I can talk about a few things that I got to know from my parents. First of all, you guys have been appalled by the fact that my parents expected me to help Sylvia while they sit back and relax. We talked about it all, and now I understand exactly what they meant and what they were thinking when they kicked Sylvia out. Turns out my parents are absolutely sick of Sylvia. I already mentioned that she's 25, doesn't even have a decent job. My parents had been sympathetic to her and tried to go easy on her because their strict parenting wasn't producing results. With me going no contact, they tried to do everything possible to make sure their other daughter didn't leave me. Sylvia took full advantage of the situation and exploited them to no end. My parents were already sick of her nonsense and ready to kick her out. Actually, they had already sat her down and told her to leave long before she got pregnant. Sylvia kept arguing with them and suddenly left her job saying that they were mistreating her. Then she started to insist that they couldn't kick her out or else she would be homeless. My parents then decided to let her stay till she got a new job. But 2 months passed, and she kept making excuses about why she wasn't getting a job, how no job was good for her. My parents were getting ready to try and kick her out a second time when she suddenly announced her pregnancy. That swiftly brought their plans to a halt. Initially, they had decided that they would let Sylvia stay and look after the kids so that she could have the chance to get her life in order. They were ready to support her as long as she tried to build a career somewhere. But Sylvia had other plans. She smugly and nonchalantly told our parents that she wouldn't be going back to work while she was pregnant. Something about not hurting the baby like I did. Yeah, she apparently said that. Very unsurprising since she's that mean and obnoxious. My parents, of course, told her that they couldn't afford to house and feed her and her child for free. My sister's solution to that problem was to tell my mom to get a job. Now listen, my mom had to leave her job 3 years ago because she is now partially disabled. She has a bunch of health issues, so working a job for her would be extremely exhausting and painful. But my sister doesn't care, of course. She wants our mother to work herself to the bone just so she can mooch off of her and have her raise the child. At that point, my father got really angry and told Sylvia that she was no longer welcome in their home and she had 2 weeks to leave. They even got her a formal eviction notice. Sylvia ignored it and just kept telling them to grow up and take responsibility for their child and grandchild. The audacity of this woman is astounding. I think now it's pretty clear to you guys why my parents want nothing to do with her. They even told me that they knew she would pawn off her kid and herself on them if they gave an inch, so they decided to nip the problem in the butt. The reason they asked me to help was because they felt bad for the kid too. They knew that I would be able to help the kid while also establishing firm boundaries with Sylvia. Also, for some odd reason, they thought I could influence and inspire Sylvia to get her career back on track. All they wanted from me was to guide her and provide her with some support so that at least the child would be taken care of. I reminded them that I still wanted nothing to do with Sylvia. It's not my fault that she got pregnant. Giving her handouts will never be helpful because she will never change herself if people keep bailing her out. I know that the kid is innocent, but that doesn't mean I should take over their responsibility while Sylvia continued living the carefree, irresponsible life she always led. My parents finally understood my perspective and apologized for trying to get me involved. We tried to brainstorm but couldn't really come up with a way to help the kid. This is very frustrating for all of us, and we are still clueless right now. Sylvia is blowing up our phones, calling us selfish and heartless among other things. I just feel drained right now and don't know what to do. Update 3. I took in all of your suggestions and have decided to have a little sit down with my sister. I called my parents and told them that we needed to have some sort of family meeting to solve this problem. We had to try and get Sylvia to say that she cannot depend on people to raise her child and take responsibility. Her carefree lifestyle may have worked for her so far, but she's going to be a mother soon as she needed to start acting like a real grown-up. I know that it's probably not a good idea to get involved in this, but I just can't stop thinking about the fate of my niece and nephew. No matter what, the child is a family member and is connected to me. My parents are beside themselves with worry and guilt. It's their grandchild too. You know? My sister's definitely not a smart woman, so we are afraid that she will go down the wrong path if we leave her to her own devices. Again, she is a grown-up woman and is responsible for the consequences of her own bad decisions, but there is a baby involved here. And some of you have shared some scary stories about how you had to do a lot of bad things in desperation because you didn't know how to survive with a child. I definitely don't want my nephew or niece to be subjected to those situations. Hell, I don't even want my sister to get into those situations. It would be better if me and my parents tried to push her a little and offer our help with certain conditions. I won't lie to myself or to you guys and say that my sister will happily agree to all this. You all know how she reacted when our parents tried to talk to her about being responsible, but things have changed a little. It's been over a week since she was kicked out. I am sure that by now, she has become aware of her reality. I'm hoping that she would be more willing to listen to us after knowing exactly how limited her options are. I'm still not sure how much of this will work, but we will try our best. If you guys feel interested in hearing what happened, you can DM me. I will tell you once the family meeting is over. Update 4. I have received too many DMs asking me how the meeting went, so I'm just going to make an update here to make things easier. I hope all of you who want to know what happened will find this update. Many of you had left comments on my last post saying that my sister wouldn't cooperate or would later flip and not uphold her end of the bargain. Well, you guys were absolutely right. We didn't even have to wait and find out. The family meeting gave us enough info to understand that she won't be cooperating with us or taking our suggestions at all. Writing this update will be very draining, which is why I kept putting it off for a while. I still feel very exhausted with everything that went down, so please excuse me if I sound irritated and sarcastic. My parents and I had a sit-down with my sister last week. Sylvia was very eager to come back home and talk to us. I think she was sure that we were taking her back with open arms and just giving in to our guilt and conscience. The girl does know how to play us like a fiddle. I think she thought that my parents would just take her back in and I would chip in for her expenses since I make good money and don't have a family yet. My sister was extremely surprised and angry when I and our parents laid down some conditions for her. The plan was to let Sylvia stay with my parents and look for a job. My mom would babysit once the baby came so that Sylvia wouldn't have to worry about childcare. I would be pitching in for her medical expenses and whatever expenses her child needed. She needed to pay rent to my parents 3 months after she got a job. This was to make sure she didn't quit her job after 3 months, which is exactly what her track record says. She would be paying rent and pitching in for groceries as well. Once her child was 1 year old, she would have to move out and find her own place. My mom would continue to babysit, but ultimately, the kid would be my sister's responsibility. My parents and I thought that we were being more reasonable than she deserved, but she didn't see it that way. She absolutely raged at us and started screaming about how we had planned to ruin her life. How? Maybe by trying to make her a responsible person. I don't even know anymore. This woman straight up demanded that we feed and house her for free along with her kid. She turned to me and told me that I should contribute half my salary to them since I was still a loser without a family. So apparently, I should be handing over half my income to her so that she can live stress-free and without a job. We tried our level best to stay calm and negotiate with her, but she simply wasn't having it. In the end, she left the house in a huff and threatened to prevent us from seeing her kid if we didn't do what she wanted us to do. This is where we are at now. My parents are both heartbroken and confused. I'm no better. Instead of reaching a solution, things have messed up even more than before. We have finally made the decision to keep Sylvia away from us because there is no other option. We would try and send her money at times just to convince her to let us see her kid, and that's all we can do right now. We don't even know where she lives, and she keeps refusing to talk to us unless we agree to do what she wants. I think at this point, she's already a lost cause. We tried what was reasonable, but I think it's time to give up. Thank you to everyone who offered advice and gave me some guidance on this issue. But looks like this is the end. Update 5. I know that most of you are surprised to see an update here. I don't even know how many people would be able to read this update. After my last update, I received some DMs wanting to know more. But back then, I didn't have an answer, so I never replied. It's been over 6 months already, but I had to come back because there have been some serious developments in these last 6 months. I hope everyone who reads my post and wanted to see a positive update sees this. This will be the last update, and it will be short. You guys will be happy to know that my sister's kid is now with me. Sylvia had a daughter who is just a month old now. She's now officially and legally my daughter. I know you guys are confused, so I'll tell you what happened. A month after my last post, Sylvia called from the police station. She was arrested for selling drugs. She apparently had drug charges before that, and I and my parents didn't know about. She was sent to jail for a while. And since she was involved with drugs, CPS also got involved and things weren't looking too good for her. She had expected us to bail her out, but none of us were willing to do that. Besides, bailing her out wouldn't have done her any good since she was going to jail anyway. Initially, We got in contact with CPS, and it was decided that my sister's kid would stay with me until she completed her jail sentence and went to rehab. It was made mandatory. Only after she proves that she got clean, they would consider her having her child live with her. It was still all very murky because drugs were found in her system at the time of her arrest. Yeah, she was smoking weed while pregnant. Anyway, I had been prepared to do what was decided. But after Sylvia gave birth, she did something shocking. She offered the baby for adoption. She actually told me that I should just take it away and keep it since she wasn't interested in being a mother. You already know what happened after that, and the good thing is that this was best for everyone present. I don't know what my sister is up to now, but it looks like she doesn't want to be around us anymore.